Are we recording, Beth? Okay, very good. It may seem counterintuitive as you use to talk about slowing down and taking a moment before responding. Our second principle is justice, equality, or equity and compassion in human relations. So we often see and feel injustice so viscerally in a way that may provoke a knee-jerk reaction rather than a composed response. I am guilty of this, not only as illustrated by my story of learning to drive stick shift, but as recently as the other day when one stepdaughter was treating another unfairly. And I sort of raised my voice and said, "Don't be a jerk," instead of pausing a moment to ask the first how she'd feel if the situation were reversed in a calm and measured tone. By textbook definition, a reaction is survival-oriented. It is instant, and it is an extension of our unconscious mind. A response, though, combines the conscious and unconscious mind, considers ourselves and others, and aligns with our core values. Fortunately for us here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Lehigh Valley, we have a social action committee that helps us respond as effectively as possible to the daily injustices we are witness to. Our Social Action Committee carefully and thoughtfully curates calls to action that can help us sift through the chaotic state of our world that I mentioned while introducing my story. This is so that we can engage in meaningful responses that make positive change versus falling trapped to reactions like fighting with family in the comments of a Facebook post, which is something I'm also guilty of. So in that vein, I'd like to invite Fran and John Kennedy to share their social justice moment, which is our practice reserved for every third Sunday of the month. And that happens to be today.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here with, I'm John Kennedy. I'm here with my wife, Fran. We have some slides to talk about some part of social action that you may not be familiar with. I know you often think of social action in terms of local outreach, but we also, as a social action committee, do certain things internationally. One of these is work we do with Global Mamas. Global Mamas is a joint nonprofit in both Ghana and the United States. Women in Ghana make clothing items, accessories, jewelry, and shea butter products and sell them worldwide. A new set of products is beautiful stationery and other products made from water hyacinths. Each year, UUCLV donates part of the November plate collection to Global Mamas. We also conduct a sale of their items every November. Next slide. Fran and I have volunteered with Global Mamas doing hands-on business math training in Ghana. This slide is in a village near Cape Coast where we actually had to travel 2 hours to get there and present our classes for these ladies. Next slide. And this is actually in Cape Coast. So you can see people come with whatever they need to bring with them, or whoever they need to bring with them. The pandemic has been devastating for their regular business. However, they have quickly shifted to making high fashion masks and have obtained a grant from a nonprofit in Germany to make tens of thousands of masks for the people of Ghana. Next slide. But these masks, as you can see, are kind of high fashion, and they're also available to us. We do have some, we have donated, purchased some and donated them to the Sharing Our Bounty auction, and they are available in that auction, and all proceeds from the sale of these particular masks will go to UUCLV. Next slide. In the past, we have supported a program of the UUUNO. That's the Unitarian Universalist United Nations organization. We have in the past been members. I'm not sure that our membership is current. But we've supported another program in Ghana called Every Child is Our Child. This program is in a city called Krobo Odumasi in Ghana. And it's an effort to keep orphans within the community. Why there are so many orphans in this community is a long story, but somewhere in the background, American business has a certain responsibility. But this is a program to help pay for the expenses of placing orphans with families. Next slide. A few years ago at UUCLV, we collected computers. And Fran and I took them to Ghana for use by the orphans. We did some hands-on training. Next slide. Well, yes. That was, yeah, we had, there was a little shock when we got to the schools and there was no electric available. So we had to go back and forth charging the computers as we went. This is a friend, Ed Kay. He happened to be there on a Fulbright and went with us that weekend. Next slide. This is a whole group of, there are actually 4 groups of orphans like this. And we traveled from school to school and did a program at each school of instructing them as best we could with a few computers we had.
And this was on a Saturday and a Sunday after the students had been preparing for exams all week.
Next slide. This program is run by a lady, we just call her Queen Mother Esther. I have the blue arrow there if you look carefully. And we were working with her in this program. The next year, she made a trip to the United Nations UUNO conference in New York and then traveled around the US. We had the privilege of hosting her at UUCLV and held an evening event and raised funds for the Every Child is Our Child program. We also, next slide. We also have provided Puerto Rico hurricane relief through a special collection that we did at the time of the worst hurricane, Hurricane Maria. If you have questions, I know this is brief, but if you have questions, our email and phone number will be placed in the chat. And of course, we're also in the church directory. So we welcome any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
I loved those pictures. Thank you so much for sharing that work that you've done and how it filters to us as a congregation. And I think it's just, excuse me, so wonderful to have a social action committee to help us learn of how we as individuals can respond to injustice. So in the spirit of promoting social justice internationally, I'd like Tara to read No One is an Island by John Donne as a reminder of how even as one person among many, we do indeed make an impact. We can shift from a reaction of feeling downhearted to a response of feeling empowered to affect positive change. Tara.
No one is an island entire of itself. Everyone is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Anyone's death diminishes me, because I am involved in humankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee.
So now, once again, we are met with a charge to act, and the responsibility associated with it can feel really heavy, and we inevitably encounter resistance along the way. Here together, it feels good and wonderful because we share these common causes. But once we leave this space, sometimes we feel alone in our pursuit for justice. We can even start to feel hopeless in our goal of world community. The question becomes, how are we to cope with these feelings? The Social Action Committee isn't sitting on our shoulder to guide our everyday interactions like a little conscience, but it'd be really cool if we could figure out a way to do that. And while their efforts and guidance are most certainly helpful, sometimes it doesn't extend to a more common occurrence. For example, keeping one's composure when faced with heckling political opposition, especially since we're in an election year. So I often see myself in my mind like the personified emotion of anger in the Disney movie Inside Out. You can see his picture being shared on the screen. He reacts. It takes a lot of energy to push him away. And even then, he doesn't leave completely, but it takes more energy to succumb to his fits. So how? How do we minimize that anger and despair and fear or sadness and take a moment to respond instead of react? And isn't it healthy to allow space for all emotions? It sure is, but it's what we do with those emotions that counts most. And anger and despair and fear and sadness don't usually lend themselves sometimes to affecting positive change. So ask yourself the questions associated with the patterns of consciousness in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So as applied to my example of a heckling supporter of political opposition, for right knowledge,
What is it?
it is a person. For perception,
Do I like it or not?
I don't like the behavior at the moment. I may or may not know much else about the person to decide for sure. For verbalization,
What is the story associated with whether I like it or not?
they support a candidate whose values don't match my own. There may be one or more, many stories serving as examples of those values in action. For sleep and memory,
How has my mind synthesized these thoughts and experiences through sleep in a way that they've now formed memories?
and those memories will fuel continued perceptions and verbalizations. So it's a process to run through those steps, and that process is a challenge to constantly be mindful of running through those steps. But it's a rewarding one. And the reason why is because it preserves energy in our head and our heart space for continuing our work as you use. And it also aligns with our fourth principle of free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Because the calm amid the chaos is in right knowledge or truth. Asking that question, what is it? So we drill down and we respond by untangling that patterning in the mind that creates dis-ease. We respond to right knowledge, our calm, our quiet, and our stillness in a world that sometimes seems anything but.
When we meet in person, this would be the time that you would be invited to share your offerings with the church and the wider community.